My sister racked up $40,000 in debts with dangerous people. My parents demanded I pay. But when I discovered they encouraged her to steal from my bank account, I made a decision that left them speechless and they never expected. I'm 30 years old, I work in finance, and basically I haven't spoken to my family in 6 months, and honestly I've never felt better. I know that sounds horrible. Like, who says that about their own family? But after what happened, after everything they asked me to do, I just can't anymore. And I need to tell this story because there are still people sending me messages saying, I'm a monster, that I abandoned my sister when she needed me most, that I'm a terrible son. So, here goes everything. I guess I should start at the beginning. I mean, this didn't start 6 months ago when everything exploded. This has been dragging on since I can remember. It was always Abigail, my younger sister, 2 years younger than me, and from the day she was born, it was like I stopped existing for my parents. And look, I'm not exaggerating or being dramatic. Literally anything Abigail wanted, Abigail got. Me? I could get the best grades, behave well, do everything perfectly, and I'd barely get a very good Lucas without them even looking up from their phone. But Abigail would get a C in math, and it was like she'd discovered the cure for cancer. My parents would celebrate that she was trying so hard and take her to dinner at her favorite restaurant. I grew up with that constant feeling that no matter what I did, I was never going to be enough. I was never going to be Abigail. When I was like 14 and Abigail was 12, she crashed the new bike they'd bought her, one of those expensive mountain ones. And when my parents asked her what happened, she said I'd pushed her. Total lie. I wasn't even there. I was at a friend's house doing a school project. But my parents grounded me for 2 weeks, no questions asked, without listening to my side. And when the neighbor finally told them he'd seen me at my friend's house all afternoon, you know what happened? Nothing. My parents said, "Oh, well, you probably did something to annoy your sister before anyway. That's how things were." I left home as soon as I turned 18. Got a part-time job, started studying at university, and basically supported myself from that moment on. My parents didn't even try to convince me to stay. I think they were even relieved to have more space and more money to spend on Abigail. I still went to family dinners occasionally, trying to maintain some kind of relationship because, well, they were my parents, right? But every time I went, it was the same thing. Abigail this, Abigail that. Look what Abigail accomplished. Isn't Abigail wonderful? Meanwhile, I was busting my ass, working and studying, sleeping like 4 hours a night, living on instant noodles and coffee. But I graduated with honors and got an incredible job at an investment firm. I started earning, well, really well, actually. And finally, I could move to a decent apartment, buy myself a car, live like a normal person. Abigail, on the other hand, failed 2 semesters at university, changed majors 3 times, and finally, didn't even graduate. But my parents always had an excuse. It was always, poor thing, she's going through a difficult time, or she needs to find her passion. Not everyone is like you, Lucas. Which brings me to about 8 months ago, when this whole nightmare started. I was like 29 and a half at the time. Abigail was 27, and one Sunday morning my mom called me. I remember it perfectly because it was my only day off, and I was planning to do absolutely nothing. Just watch series and rest. I answered the phone, and she didn't even greet me. She went straight to the point. "I need you to transfer me $40,000, she said. Just like that. I thought it was a joke or I'd heard wrong. So I asked her what, and she repeated, $40,000. Lucas, I need them today. I asked her what she needed that amount of money for. I mean, $40,000 isn't just anything. And that's when she dropped everything on me. Turns out Abigail had accumulated a debt of $40,000. $40,000. How? I don't even know completely. Something about credit cards, personal loans, and apparently she'd borrowed money from people you definitely shouldn't borrow money from. My mom was hysterical, saying these guys were dangerous, that they'd gone to Abigail's house, that they were threatening her, that if she didn't pay, they were going to hurt her. And me, being the responsible older brother and blah blah blah, had to fix this. I was like in shock for a moment because, really? Were they really asking me this? I told my mom no, definitely not, that Abigail was a 27-year-old adult, and this was her problem, that she'd made those decisions and had to face the consequences. My mom started screaming, literally screaming, saying how could I be so selfish, that Abigail was my sister, that family helps each other, that I had the money and she desperately needed it. I told her no again and hung up because my heart was beating like crazy, and I felt like I was going to explode. 5 minutes later, my dad called me. My dad almost never calls me, so I already knew things were serious. He was calmer at first, like trying to reason with me, saying he understood my position but they really needed my help, that Abigail was in danger. I explained that it wasn't my responsibility, that I worked hard for my money and I wasn't going to throw it away on my sister's problems that she created herself. My dad then changed his tone and basically told me that if I didn't help, they were going to help me understand what it meant to be part of a family. I don't know what that meant exactly, but it sounded like a threat. The next 2 weeks were hell. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. My mom, my dad, Abigail, uncles, cousins, even friends of my parents I barely knew, were texting and calling me, all saying the same thing, that I had to help my sister, that it was my duty, that how could I sleep at night knowing she was in danger. My aunt, my mom's sister, was the only one who supported me. She wrote to me saying she knew how they'd always treated Abigail and me, that she understood my decision, and that I shouldn't feel guilty. That helped a bit, but the pressure was unbearable. I blocked several numbers, including my parents, but they kept finding ways to contact me. And then something happened that still makes me furious when I think about it. Like 3 weeks into all this drama, I got a call from my bank. Someone had tried to access my account. They'd tried to make a transfer of $40,000. The bank blocked it because it seemed suspicious, and they were calling me to verify. Obviously, it wasn't me. I told them I didn't authorize anything, and to investigate what had happened. After hanging up, I knew immediately. I knew who it had been. I went straight to Abigail's apartment, drove like crazy because I was livid, literally felt my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I knocked on the door, she opened, and when she saw my face, she turned pale. I didn't even try to be diplomatic. I asked her directly if she'd tried to steal from me. She started with how she didn't know what I was talking about, but I kept pressing, and finally she admitted that, yes, she'd used information of mine she had from years ago to try to access my account. You know what the worst part was? That she didn't look even a little bit sorry. Her attitude was basically, well, I had to try. You didn't want to help me the nice way. I asked her how she dared, how she could think it was okay to literally steal from me, and she told me I was her brother, that brothers are supposed to help each other, that she would have done the same for me. I told her that was a lie, that she'd never done anything for me. And that's when she started crying, saying I'd always been the favorite, that I'd always had everything easy. I laughed in her face because, really? She thought she wasn't the favorite? The level of lack of self-awareness was incredible. Then she dropped another bomb on me. She told me that Mom and Dad had told her to try it, that probably I wouldn't even notice, and that if I noticed, surely I'd understand and forgive because we were family. That's when I was speechless. My own parents had encouraged my sister to steal from me. I couldn't process that. I simply couldn't. I left without saying anything else, because if I stayed one more minute, I was going to say things I couldn't take back, or worse. 2 days later, my parents showed up at my apartment. They didn't call, didn't give notice. They just rang the doorbell at 8 in the morning on a Saturday. When I opened the door, they walked in without me inviting them, and my mom immediately started with how we needed to talk. I told them I had nothing to talk about with them after what they'd done, after they encouraged Abigail to steal from me. My dad said I was exaggerating, that they'd only suggested she ask me for the money again, that they didn't. No, she was going to take that route. Lie, total lie, and I knew it. The conversation escalated fast. My mom crying, my dad getting angrier and angrier, me trying to stay calm but feeling like I was going to explode. I told them Abigail wasn't my responsibility, that I hadn't created her problems, that I wasn't going to pay for her mistakes. My mom told me that, then she didn't consider me her son, What kind of person leaves their family in the street? I responded, what kind of parents favor one child over the other, their whole lives? What kind of parents encourage their daughter to steal from her own brother? My dad then played his final card. He told me that if I didn't help Abigail, they were going to cut me from their will, that I wouldn't see a cent of their inheritance. And honestly, I laughed. I told them I'd never counted on their money, that I'd supported myself since I was 18, that I didn't need anything from them. My dad turned red with rage and told me I was selfish, ungrateful, and a bunch of other things I don't even remember, because at that point, I was asking them to leave my house. They didn't want to leave, so I threatened to call the police, and finally they left, but not before my mom saying this wasn't over. And it wasn't over. Like 2 weeks later, I received a letter from a lawyer. My parents were threatening to sue me for moral obligation to help a family member in need. I don't know if they legally had any case, probably not, but the fact that they were trying hurt more than I thought it would. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I realized this was never going to end, that they were never going to stop pressuring me, manipulating me, trying to make me feel guilty. I made the hardest decision of my life. I blocked my entire family, everyone, except my aunt who'd supported me. I blocked numbers, emails, social media, everything. I sent them a final message saying I didn't want to hear from them again, that what they'd done was unforgivable, and that from that moment on, they didn't have a son, they didn't have a brother, they had nothing from me. And I did it. I cut contact completely. Did I think that would stop them? Of course not. They started calling me from unknown numbers, sending me letters to my address. They even showed up a couple more times at my building, but the doorman already had instructions not to let them up. One of my cousins even went to my office to try to talk to me, saying I was destroying the family, that Abigail was suffering, that my parents were devastated. I told him to leave or I'd call security, and he left. The worst moment was like 3 months after all this. I was in an important meeting at the office, a presentation for a big client, and suddenly my assistant came into the room, which she never does unless it's an emergency, and told me there was someone in reception causing a scene. I went out and it was my mom. She was there crying, screaming, demanding to see me, saying her son was there and she needed to talk to me. People were staring at us, my colleagues, clients, everyone. I felt humiliated, angry, but also like exhausted. I asked security to remove her from the building and went back to my meeting like nothing happened. But inside, I was destroyed. That night, I hired a lawyer. I explained the whole situation, and he helped me draft a cease and desist letter for my entire family. Basically, it told them that if they contacted me again, if they showed up at my home or work again, if they continued with any kind of harassment, I was going to take legal action. My lawyer sent the letters and, you know what? It worked. Suddenly, everything went silent. No calls, no messages, nothing. It was like they'd disappeared. It's been 6 months since the last time I spoke to them. My aunt keeps me a bit updated on what's happening, though I don't ask for information. She told me Abigail finally found a way to pay part of her debt. I think she got a job or something. I don't know the details, and honestly, I don't care much. My parents apparently are telling everyone their version of the story, that I'm a horrible son who abandoned his family, that I'm selfish and cruel. Some relatives have unfollowed me on social media. Some have sent me nasty messages that I simply delete without reading. But others have contacted me privately saying they understand my decision, that they've also seen how I was treated my whole life. And me, how am I? Better than ever, honestly. I got a promotion at work 2 months ago. I'm dating someone incredible, who supports me completely. I have friends who are more family than my biological family ever was. I no longer feel that constant guilt I felt before, that weight of having to meet impossible expectations or never being enough. Some nights I still wonder if I did the right thing, if I was too harsh, if I should have tried to fix things somehow. But then I remember everything that happened. I remember how they treated me my whole life, and I know I made the right decision for me. Last week, I saw my mom by chance at the supermarket. She saw me too. We looked at each other for a second, and then she turned and went down another aisle. I didn't feel anything. Not sadness, not anger, not the urge to approach. I just felt like relief that she didn't try to talk to me. And that tells me everything I need to know about my decision. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to walk away from toxic people even if they're your family. It's okay to prioritize your own mental health and well-being. It took me 30 years to learn it, but I finally understand.